what happens if you come down with the disease. So one way to think about this is cholesterol, heart disease. Cholesterol is a problem, heart disease is the problem. SARS-CoV-2 is the infection, COVID-19 is the disease that you may or may not come down with. They've been used interchangeably, and that's a problem when you're trying to understand it. What to do if people are trying to force you to be vaccinated, what to do if you've been exposed to somebody who's been vaccinated, and what can you do if you've been vaccinated? We're going to get to all those questions and hopefully more. The truth itself is frequently ridiculed, then violently opposed, and then it becomes self-evident. As Galileo Galilei once said, all truths are easy to understand. Once you discover them, the point is to discover them. So jobs of researchers and scientists like myself is to discover that truth and then share that truth. And like Galileo, what I'm doing here today is telling you, don't take my word for it and don't take somebody else's word for it. If you understand what you need to do, you too can look up and realize that the earth revolves around the sun and not the other way around. And that's what Galileo said. You too can figure this out. You're smart enough. So the cookies will not come down from the top shelf because everybody is smart enough to get this. We're going to replace fear and knowledge. We're going to inform you. We're going to educate you. We're going to empower you. And yes, at the very end, I'm going to give you some of the much needed answers and hope that you've been looking for. But we're also going to ask you to do something, a call to action, because me standing up here talking to you, I can go home and talk to myself. I've heard my voice for 65 years. My children have heard it for 28, 30, and 32 years, okay? Nobody's dying to hear my voice, but what I hope you're dying is to hear the information from my voice. The heuristic method. Do not take my word for this. No. Just because I have the degrees I have, do not take my word for it, because you've seen a lot of people with good degrees, and they may not be telling you the truth, or they may be telling you what they think is the truth. Do not take my word for it. All of this material is backed up on the website. There's more than 60 papers published on the SARS-CoV-2 site. I've got 25 or 30 of my papers out of roughly 450 to 500 publications that I've published. There's a ton of material and a lot of people to thank for this material. Don't take my word for it, but don't blindly follow somebody else's word for it either, because this is the moment you're in.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Nothing more. Event 2021. Inform, educate, empower, and provide hope. SARS-CoV-2 versus COVID-19. SARS-CoV-2 is a coronavirus. A coronavirus means it looks like a crown. This is a slice-through tissue of a coronavirus. Anybody telling you they don't exist needs to look at this. Anybody who tells you that we don't have the genetic sequence, we do. This is what it looks like. These are spike proteins, and because of these spike proteins sitting around, it looks like a crown. And this is a cryo-electron micrograph of coronavirus. How do we know where this virus came from? You look for the smoking gun. The unique thing about this virus is its spike protein. You've all heard of this. Is there anybody in this room who has not heard of the term spike protein? And yet, if I asked you to explain what it is you would have challenges because you've simply heard the term and it's not been explained to you. This is the spike protein. This is the surface, the membrane of the virus, and these are the spike proteins. It looks like a tree. This is a molecule. It's a molecule that actually bends right here as it searches for the cells that it's going to attach to. There are three things about this spike protein that we're going to look at that tell us where it came from. The first one is called an HIV pseudovirus glycoprotein 120. If you're wondering where it's at, it's right here on the molecule. We know where it's at because we have the genetic sequence of it. The second thing we're going to talk about is what's called the PRRA insert. Every amino acid, and these are three amino acids, but four of them, these are the same too. Every amino acid is referred to by a letter of the alphabet. So proline is P, arginine is R, arginine's R, alanine is A. If you're wondering why this got an R and this got an A, AL comes before AR. Okay. This is 4 amino acids, and it sits right here, and it is critical for this virus to infect people. No other coronavirus, as you're going to see on the planet, has this. No other coronavirus, as you'll see through the presentation, has HIV in it. This is like a box, if you will. If you have a box on the floor and you step on it, you will change the shape and what it can hold. When you have a molecule and you insert something into it, you change its shape. As a result of that, the very top of the spike protein, what's called the receptor binding site, where it attaches to the ACE2 receptor, has changed in structure. And the structure of this part makes it a prion-like domain. A prion is something that changes the protein of something else it comes into contact, and it produces diseases like mad cow disease. Gain-of-function research, if you've not heard about it, is the scientific method of looking at something, in this case a virus, and making it more infective and more harmful. Now, behind that, there's a potential benefit, right? If science could stay in front of a virus, just right in front of it, we would have a one-upmanship on dealing with it. The problem is what happens when you're not just one-upping the virus, but you're leaping it by hundreds or thousands of years, which is not something you should expect to need to address naturally. Research in this country dates back to 1999 when the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services began putting money into understanding these viruses and gain-of-function research. It's been going on for a while. In 2000, a gentleman by the name of Ralph Barrick, Professor Ralph Barrick at the University of North Carolina, who gets money from Peter Daszak of EcoHealth, who gets money from our federal government, Dr. Barrick began working with these coronaviruses, and he successfully used reverse genetics. That should send a slight alarm bell off into your head, where he went and rescued what's called coronavirus urbani and made a very infectious clone. That was back in 2000. In 2002, 2 years later, Barrick, Young, and Curtis, all at the University of North Carolina, got a patent for chimeric DNA. Now, if you see little asterisks up here, you'll find something down at the bottom, because a researcher like myself will tell you exactly where my statement's coming from. That's what backs it up. You can go read it. You don't have to take my word for it. Some of these you might want to get somebody else to help you interpret, but you can read it. A chimer means you take parts of one animal and you combine it with parts of another animal. That's our term for what translates into gain of function, because these things aren't naturally occurring. Here's the NIH grant that paid for this. Many of you are probably painfully familiar with Senator Rand Paul and Senator Kennedy asking questions of, who is that? Dr. Fauci. Asking about gain-of-function research. Anything that says that NIH, recognizing that NIAID, the National Institutes of Allergies and Infectious Diseases, is under the umbrella of NIH. Okay? So anything that happens at NIH, And anything that happens in NIAID, these things are connected. And when you get the full backstory, you'll realize that Dr. Fauci was on committees that had to oversee gain-of-function research. So when he says we didn't fund it, we didn't provide it, okay, you be the judge. Red pill, blue pill.